Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, or welcome if you are new to my channel. Glad to have you here. So, we're going to continue, of course, with the Paranormal Activity review series that I'm doing for November 2024 here. Um, and we're going to take a look at the fifth movie today. Again, part of this six movie Blu ray pack here of the first six Paranormal Activity movies. And that is Paranormal Activity, the marked ones from 2014. Or Paranormal Activity 5, I guess, if you want to go in numerical order. Um, but Paranormal Activity, the marked ones from 2014. So, again, first time watch, just like all of these, except for the first one are. So, let's just go ahead and get into it. So, Paranormal Activity, the marked ones, is a 2014 American found footage supernatural horror film written and directed by Christopher Landon. Released on January 3rd, 2014 in the United States, it's the fifth installment of the Paranormal Activity film series. It is also Landon's second directorial film after Burning Palms. So this movie opens in June of 2012. 18-year-old high school graduate Jesse Arista lives with his family in Oxnard, California. In the apartment below lives a mysterious woman named Anna Sanchez, who everyone believes to be a witch. When Anna is found murdered, Jesse and his best friend Hector spot classmate Oscar running from the scene. The two investigate the apartment, where they find black magic items, VHS tapes, and a journal of spells. After Jesse, Hector, and their friend Marisol try out a ritual, paranormal occurrences take place in Jesse's apartment. One night, the trio communicates with an unknown entity through a Simon Says game. Jesse finds a bite mark on his arm and discovers he has superhuman abilities, such as levitation. He later encounters Oscar, who has black eyes and the same bite mark on his arm. Oscar tells Jesse that something is inside them that will take over and they will harm those they love before disappearing. Oscar then commits suicide. The group discovers a trap door in Anna's apartment where they find a witch altar and photos of Jesse, his pregnant mother Anna, Oscar, and Lois. Jesse encounters the younger versions of Katie and Christy before being attacked by an unknown force. So yeah, that's the setup and the premise for Paranormal Activity, the marked ones. As far as the cast goes, we have Andrew Jacobs as Jesse Arista, Jose Diaz as Hector Estrella, Gabrielle Walsh as Marisol Vargas, Naomi Gonzalez is Yvette Arista. Richard Cabral is Arturo Lopez. Carlos Prats is Oscar Lopez. Juan Vasquez is Santo. Molly Ephraim is Ali Ray. And Katie Featherston is Katie. So yeah, that's to set up the premise and the cast for the 2014 Paranormal Activity movie, The Marked Ones. I actually like this movie. I don't know what the consensus is on some of these movies. I'll be interested to watch ranking videos and more review videos about other people's thoughts as far as how they rank these movies or which ones they think are good or which ones they think are bad. So I don't know where this one stands, but I actually like this movie. And there's one big reason why that I'll get into in my pros here. But yeah, let's talk about Let me give you my review, I should say, for Paranormal Activity, the marked ones from 2014, starting with the pros or the things that I liked about this movie. And the biggest thing for me is this felt fresh. And I feel like the series, especially after the fourth film, they needed sort of a fresh start. They needed something different than we were getting in the first four movies. And this movie, I like the fact that the movie changes up the setting. The first four movies are all set in the suburban house, following a family or a couple. And this movie focuses on an apartment complex and kind of a tough, rougher, rundown type of area in California. This Oxnard, California. I'm not really sure where that's actually located. But the franchise needed this. They needed a reboot, if you will. Not a reboot. That's not the right word for it. But they needed a fresh start, or sort of a refresh. That's what I was looking for, a refresh. And I feel like this movie did that. The setting is a big part of that. It just kind of gives the movie a different aesthetic and it added some much needed life into the series, in my opinion. That's how I felt anyway. Maybe other people don't feel that way, but yeah, they definitely changed up the setting. And with changing up the setting, they also sort of changed up the idea of this movie. It's almost more about possession than it is about watching chandeliers shake or things fall off the kitchen table. Like the first four movies, it's a little bit more of a camera that's watching a room when somebody walks out and some weird shit happens. And then they come back, and obviously the tension rises and it builds up towards the end. In this movie, they have a little bit of that, but it focuses more on individual characters and what's happening to them. And I thought that was also a very fresh and creative way, a unique way that we haven't seen in the franchise yet, to sort of breathe life into this series at this point of the fifth movie. So yeah, definitely just the change of scenery as well as change in ideas of the story here, while still tying into the overall narrative of the franchise. Hopefully that makes sense to you all. But that's the biggest thing I noticed about the movie, and the thing that I enjoyed the most. I also, maybe because of those things, I really felt the intensity of the scares and the horror that takes place in this movie, maybe more so than any of the others, frankly. As I said, because it's not just cameras shooting rooms in a house, because it's different, a different setting and a different vibe in terms of possession more than an unseen entity, even though we still get that in this movie, along with some of the other things that have been introduced in this franchise. They just changed it up enough with that, and I don't know. I felt this one more. I was more on the edge of my seat, especially the last 30 minutes or so, when most of these movies actually provide the horror. The first 30 minutes, of course, is the character introductions and the setup, and then like the mid-third, the 2/3 mark is kind of the what's going on here, investigative, characters from previous movies pop in kind of thing that you get in this movie as well. But yeah, I don't know. It just felt different and unique to me. It just felt like a more genuine buildup of tension with creepy moments, especially at the end where a character is moving through a dark house. That really worked for me, as it did at the end of the third movie, but it even works better here, in my opinion. I really enjoy the tie-ins that this movie has. Like I said, it's very much a self-contained, its own movie, its own take on the Paranormal Activity franchise, while still having plenty of ties and being part of this Paranormal Activity universe. It doesn't ignore the other movies. There's still continuity there, which I really like, both in terms of the timeline and in terms of some of the characters that are brought back for this movie and some of the storylines. And other characters that we see through pictures and flashbacks, things like that. So it was well crafted in that regard, while still, like I said, still being its own self-contained movie and giving us a unique feel to it. I thought the acting was pretty good in this movie, particularly by Andrew Jacobs, who plays our main character of Jesse, one of the possessed main characters in this movie. He had to go to some pretty dark places, and I thought both the makeup that was used as well as his performance was very good, because like most of these movies, it starts out very lighthearted, very cracking jokes and busting their friends' balls or siblings' balls, whatever the case might be, and things like that. And this movie's no different. And he's a big part of that. But then again, once shit starts hitting the fan, I thought he played it up pretty well, and I believed in what he was going through and sort of the desperation that was part of that. So I thought he did a good job. Not everybody's great. There's some substandard or shaky acting, but for the most part, I thought the two main characters had good chemistry together. Is it Jorge Diaz as Hector Estrella? I thought he was good too, as sort of the best friend, and what he had to go through in the movie. Those two main characters, I think, do a good job in the movie. I have to say, I think this is a well-directed movie by Christopher Landon. Like I said, it kind of does its own thing. It feels fresh, while still moving the overall franchise narrative and story and the lore of this franchise at this point forward, which is a very hard thing to do. He's able to give us something different, a different setting, sort of a different take on Paranormal Activity that isn't all, chandelier shaking and pictures falling off the walls when nobody's in the room, to more characters being possessed and acting out violently and scaredly, if you will. But still moving it forward, still not forgetting about the overall lore in this franchise. And I think Christopher Landon does a great job with that. A really fresh but also satisfying take in this entry of the franchise. So, and then my final pro is, and I don't know how other people feel about this, but the ending of this movie. There's a character that, as I talked about earlier, and the aesthetic is going through this dark, creepy house, a house that we've seen before. Now, that's as much as I'll say in a previous movie at a different time. But basically, a character goes through a weird-looking door that ends up... He basically steps into a different room in a different house in a different movie. And that's as much as I want to say without giving anything away. And I just thought that was brilliant. It really messed up my mind in a positive way at the end of this movie. And then as that character tries to escape what's going on in that particular scene, you get a really good scare. Not necessarily a jump scare, but a very demonic kind of scare that got me. And that was pretty much the end of the movie. I just thought it was a very effective ending. Probably one of the more effective endings of this franchise, frankly, of the first 5 movies anyway that I've seen. And yeah, I just absolutely love the tie-in to the end of this movie to another movie with other characters from that movie. I just thought that was very unexpected, by me at least, and very well done. I enjoyed it. Maybe I could see where some people might not, especially if they really like that other movie, and this kind of ruins that for them in some way. I didn't feel that at all, but I want to throw that out there because I know people have they view things differently. But anyway, for me, it works. So those are the pros for Paranormal Activity, the marked ones. As far as cons go, kind of some familiar ones that you've heard me say before. You still have the found footage problem in this movie of characters just carrying around cameras even towards the end of the movie, despite the fact people are dying around them and there's danger all around them. And in this movie, it's even less explained. I think they kind of gave up on explanations for why cameras are, being used in a found footage manner. In some of the other movies where we were all focusing on a house, there were surveillance cameras, so that kind of made sense. There were some other things going on. And here, though, they couldn't really do that because you're in an apartment complex. So it's basically the fact that these 2 main characters get cameras as graduation gifts. They both graduate high school at the beginning of this movie. So one gets a GoPro, I think, and other one just gets a handheld camera. And that's the explanation for it. I don't really buy it. I don't think it really makes it all that realistic. But again, that's a general problem with found footage, most found footage movies, as I've said in other reviews. But yeah, this movie, they don't really do anything more than that to explain it. And so that's not great for me. We also have the typical crappy jump scares that clearly, at this point, this franchise has adopted. That they really didn't have in the first 2 movies, and that's still disappointing to me. Just not a fan of the cheap jump scares. This movie has 2 or 3 of them in the first 30 or 40 minutes that are just lazy and cheap, as you would expect. I will say it did take me longer to get into this movie, to kind of get behind these characters, more so than some of the previous movies. I don't really know why that is. I think it just kind of... The first 30 minutes or so, it was a lot of busting each other's balls and making jokes and drinking with family members. And I don't know. I wasn't really into it the first 20, 30 minutes, to be honest with you. Maybe it was just the mood I was in. Because I didn't hate the characters or anything, but it took me a while to get behind them and get into them. But once I did, I did. So whatever that's worth. But I will say that the first 30 minutes or so kind of dragged a bit for me, as it tends to do in these movies, if we're being honest about it. There also are some unintentionally funny parts, like people flying through the air once they've either been hit or shot, as the case towards the end of this movie with some of the possessed people, and how they fly through the air. It looked pretty hokey, pretty cheesy, and it made me laugh out loud. I don't know if that was intentional or not, or if that was just an effects gaff where they went a little bit over the top with it, but I don't think it was intentional, so that's why I'm putting it in my cons. And then finally, this could kind of be a mixed aspect for people, much like the ending of this movie, perhaps. I'm not sure. And while that first mixed aspect, if you want to say the ending of this movie, I'm on the positive side of that, where other people might be on the negative side. This part of it, I'm more on the negative side, where other people might view it as a positive. And that's the fact that these cameras, there's a lot more you can get sick watching this found footage movie compared to the first four, is what I'm trying to say, because there's a lot of shaky cam, there's a lot of characters running around with handheld cameras and they're all over the place, there's a lot of camera flickers and wild filming, that if you're somebody that gets sick to that sort of thing, this movie's probably not going to be that enjoyable for you. Now, the reason I say that it's mixed is because it also adds an authenticity to this movie, kind of like the Blair Witch Project did, where some of the earlier movies, you could tell, even though they said it was found footage, and even though there was handheld cameras being walked around, how clear the picture was, how well the camera was positioned, the angles, and not having a lot of the wild movements and stuff, kind of made me think that it was done more professionally than they wanted us to believe it was. This movie doesn't do that. This movie probably does feel more authentic to a lot of people. In terms of regular people handling handheld cameras and not having that Hollywood shine to it, or that professional service of it, if you will. So I found it to be kind of hard to follow, as I've talked about in other found footage movies as well. Wasn't my favorite thing, although it was effective in some parts, the shaky cam, but I had to blink my eyes or close them for a few seconds just to avoid getting nauseous. So it is what it is. That's probably going to be a personal thing. But overall, guys, I enjoyed this entry more than the last one anyway. I'm going to give this movie a 7.5 out of 10 because it's not perfect, but it did breathe fresh life into the series at this point, in my opinion. We'll see where they go with the last couple movies that exist here that I have yet to see. But I should mention, too, I also like the fact that they're going to make me look at the Simon Says game a little differently when I see it in the future. And I also like the fact that they kind of touched on an ending of a previous movie that was kind of you were kind of left in limbo with it. It didn't totally explain it, but I think it kind of revisited it again, and I kind of like that too. So, like I said, those tie into the other movies, well, this being its own movie, that worked for me. So 7.5 out of 10 for Paranormal Activity, the marked ones. From 2014. Go ahead and comment down below what you guys think of Paranormal Activity, the marked ones. Do you like it more or less than I do? Why not? Comment down below. Please like this video, hit the little notification bell, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss any of my upcoming reviews for this series or any of my other great horror content coming out in December into next year. So with all that being said, I hope you guys are enjoying this Paranormal Activity franchise review series. Hope you're doing well, and as always, you know what, stay scared. Bye.